and welcome. My name is Stephanie Galega, and I am the Education Facilitator here at SAiF. Today I will be taking you through a presentation on what can be a very difficult topic, but it's an important one to understand: setting healthy boundaries with our adult children. I'm going to read you a powerful quote that's going to guide us through this presentation. It's by Brené Brown. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. So, setting boundaries with our adult children can be very difficult, but ultimately it's going to be beneficial not only for you, but for your child and the entire relationship. Are you uncertain if you need to set firmer boundaries? Have your adult children moved back into your home and expect you to help them? Does it feel like you're living in crisis mode constantly? Do you sacrifice your own wants and needs to provide for your adult child? Are you feeling burnt out? There are different types of boundaries that we can discuss. The first one is possession and property, or possession and home. So that involves rules around your physical space. Anything you own, could be your vehicle, could be just any object that's yours. And you have to be sure that you're conveying your expectations on how you expect your possessions to be treated. There are moral boundaries. These involves topics of discussion, use of language, any type of behavior that might indicate a lack of integrity. And you need to decide, what will you do if your children disrespect your moral boundaries? Emotional boundaries include anything around our thoughts and our feelings, and making sure that we identify our no-go zone. Are there certain topics that you will not tolerate? Are there certain behaviors you will not tolerate, such as yelling, being intimidated? And have you expressed this to your adult children? And do you know what you will do if they cross those boundaries? We might also want to consider our financial boundaries. What are your guidelines for giving money, lending money? How much are you willing to spend? How much are you able to spend on your adult child? Where is that line? So why do some of us struggle to maintain boundaries with our children? Well, at the end of the day, they're our children, and we were once completely responsible for their well-being, for their happiness, for their survival. However, if we have done our job correctly as parents, we should have been able to raise independent and autonomous adults. And when we see them struggle, it can be really difficult, and we might feel compelled to swoop in and help them, even if they can do it on their own. How will stronger boundaries benefit my child and I, and the relationship as a whole? It's going to encourage independence, giving your adult child a greater sense of self-efficacy and higher self-esteem. It's going to reduce resentment. You're not going to feel burnt out all the time. You're not going to feel completely drained by them, and that's going to remove that resentment. You're going to have a more fulfilling relationship because nobody's dependent on the other. It's going to be a relationship that's full of reciprocity and mutual enjoyment. So how can we do it? We can communicate clearly. We must be tough but be firm. This can be challenging. Clear communication is not necessarily an inherent skill or characteristic. It's something that we have to practice, something we have to cultivate. Some of us are better at it than others. We must be consistent and maintain our boundaries. Once we have drawn that line, we can't allow that line to be pushed. We have to stick to what we say. We have to practice saying no. We must remember that no is a complete sentence. We don't have to ramble on with excuses. If someone presents you with a question or a request and you don't want to do that, you really only have to say no. You may need to consider involving a third party. Again, communication and boundaries aren't inherent. They are skills and concepts we need to work on. It can be very difficult if this is the first time we've really tried to do that. It can be even more difficult if we have allowed this particular individual to push our boundaries for many, many years. So just know that there are counselors and mediators and frontline workers at organizations like SAiF that are more than happy to help you set these boundaries. You may need to reach out for emotional support. Establishing these boundaries and saying no can bring up a lot of heavy feelings. And again, if you're not familiar with them or you don't have the toolkit to wade through those murky waters, it's a really great idea to reach out to an organization like SAiF or a counselor or a supportive friend, another family member that can give you support in this situation. When we are setting boundaries, it's important that we use I statements. Instead of blaming, we should really focus on how the behaviors affect us, how they make us feel. So I'm going to provide you with some examples. I'm sure you can come up with some on your own, but the ones we have in this presentation are, I can help occasionally, but I can't always rearrange my schedule for last-minute requests. I am happy to help with advice, but I can't provide financial support. There are house rules, including quiet hours and respecting shared spaces. If you live here, you need to contribute financially. I will not tolerate disrespectful language or behavior, even when you are upset. I love my grandkids, but I am not a full-time babysitter. And again, no. N-O is a complete sentence that can be all you say. Now, as I've stated before, if people are used to getting their way with you, they're not used to you setting these boundaries, they are going to be uncomfortable. They're going to be possibly in shock. So they might try to push back and they might try and push those boundaries, but we need to be sure that we maintain them. Things to watch out for include guilt. This person may try and guilt you when you say no. And guilt is a really powerful emotion. I suggest reaching out for emotional support, finding a professional that can help you wade through that guilt. It's not an easy process. Exhaustion. Now, if someone catches you when you are drained, you're tired, you might be more susceptible to giving in when you don't want to, and then you're going to be disappointed in yourself later on. So when someone comes to you and they're trying to cross a boundary when you're feeling tired, it's a best practice to take a step back, try and delay the conversation till when you're feeling rested and you're just feeling up to it. Sympathy. The person might try and gain your sympathy for their situation. Again, remember, these are adults. You have done your job. You have done your best raising an independent person. Reframe that sympathy. Manipulation and coercion. Unfortunately, some situations do get to be extreme. If you find that you are being manipulated and coerced or you're being intimidated, if you don't feel safe, you should definitely reach out to emergency services. If you don't feel safe, call 911. Otherwise, seek out that third party, seek out professional help. Intimidation, like I just said, if you feel you're afraid for your safety, please call 911. Oh, the guilt is a big one. We all feel some sort of guilt when we say no to our children. So how can we cope with that? When we go into these tough conversations, we have to go in with both eyes open, knowing that there is a possibility of discomfort, and we just have to accept that these feelings will come up. Reframe the guilt, reframe it in the sense that you can overcome the guilt thinking, this is better for our relationship. me saying no, me not having resentment, will be better for us in the long run. Practice, practice, practice. Again, practice with the role playing. Find a friend to go back and forth on these tough conversations. Go see a counselor. They're happy to role play with you. It can be difficult, but it's so worth it to get this skill down. Find support. There are many support groups out there for situations exactly like this. Know that you're not alone. Remember, establishing boundaries isn't selfish or unloving. It's the best way to give your children the wings they need to be responsible adults. Self-compassion is huge. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I really do think that we need more of it, and here are some ways that we can practice it. If you realize that you've had weak boundaries in the past, you need to be kind to yourself. It's a skill you didn't know. Maybe you weren't educated on it. Maybe you didn't have good people to mirror off of. If we don't have people who demonstrate strong boundaries, it's not likely that we'll develop them on our own. And remember, everyone has limits and they aren't all the same. Don't compare yourself to other families. Just because another parent is giving to their adult child doesn't mean that you can or that you should. And remind yourself your needs are just as important as anyone else's. You matter too. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to provide you with a quick summary of everything that we went over. Remember, boundaries are an important part of every healthy relationship, including the relationship with ourselves. When we set boundaries, we must be clear. We must state them clearly. You might need to state them in multiple different ways, such as in person or over text, and then be consistent. Hold those boundaries. You may experience pushback. In fact, that is very common. Fill your toolkit with ways to cope with that pushback. Know that guilt will most likely come up and be prepared for it. Remember, you are not alone. There are many organizations and professionals that can help you, including the Stop Abuse in Families Society, SAiF. Here are some helpful resources if you find you are in this situation. I'm going to leave them up on the screen for a minute. Here at SAiF, we have the St. Albert Seniors Association, we have the Seniors Abuse Helpline, and we have the protections for persons in care. Please visit our website to learn more. Thank you again for watching this presentation and being with me today. This is a very important topic, and I feel very grateful that I am able to share it with you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.